Now read this.
Hello, and welcome back to Now Read This, Lloyd Alexander, The Chronicles of Prydain, Book 2, The Black Cauldron, Chapter 8, A Stone in the Shoe. Outside the waypost, night had already fallen. The sky was clear once more, but the chill had deepened. Prydain and Fluda held a hurried council on which path to follow, and agreed the company should ride westward until dawn, conceal themselves and sleep, then turn due south. As before, Eilonwy shared Melinlas with Taran, and Gurgi clung to the back of Luego. Fluda had offered to lead the way, claiming he had never been lost and could find the marshes with his eyes shut after 2 harp strings had snapped. He reconsidered and gave up his position to Prydain. Dolly, still muttering angrily about his buzzing ears, rode last as rearguard, although he flatly refused to make himself invisible no matter what the circumstances. Ellidyr had spoken to no one since leaving the melancholy Gwistel, and Taran had seen the cold rage in his eyes after the companions' decision to press on to the marshes of Morva. "I think he really would have tried to bring back the cauldron by himself," Taran said to Eilonwy, "and you know how much chance he would have had alone. That's the kind of childish thing I'd have done when I was an assistant pig-keeper." "You're still an assistant pig-keeper," answered Eilonwy. "You're going to these silly swamps because of Ellidyr, and anything else you say is pure nonsense. Don't tell me it wouldn't have been wiser to find Gwydion, but no, you have to decide the other way and drag the rest of us along." Taran did not reply. Eilonwy's words stung him, all the more because he had begun to regret his own decision. Now the companions had set off. Doubts tormented him, and his heart was heavy. Taran could not forget the strange tone in Prydain's voice, and sought again and again to understand why he had turned from a choice rightfully his. He jogged Melinlas closer to Prydain and leaned from the saddle. "I am troubled," he said in a low voice, "and I wonder now if we should not turn back. I fear you have kept something from me, and had I known what it was, I would have chosen otherwise." If Prydain shared Taran's doubts, he showed no sign. In the saddle he rode unbowed, as though he had gained new strength, and the weariness of the journey could no longer touch him. On his face was a look Taran had never seen before, and could not fathom. In it was pride, yet more than that, for it held, as well, a light that seemed almost joyous. After a long pause, Prydain said, "There is a destiny laid on us to do what we must do, though it is not always given to us to see it." "I think you see many things," Taran replied quietly, "many things which you will tell no one. It has long been in my mind," he went on with much hesitation, "and now, more than ever, the dream you had, the last night in Caer Dallben. You saw Ellidyr and King Morgant. To me you foretold I would grieve, but what did you dream of yourself?" Prydain smiled. "Is that what troubles you? Very well, I shall tell you. I saw myself in a glade, and though winter lay all around, it was warm and sunlit. Birds called and flowers sprang up from bare stones." "Your dream was beautiful," said Eilonwy, "but I can't guess its meaning." Taran nodded. "Yes, it is beautiful. I feared it had been unhappy, and for that reason you chose not to speak of it." Prydain said nothing more, and Taran fell back into his own thoughts, still finding no reassurance. Melinlas moved ahead, sure-footed despite the darkness. The stallion was able to avoid the loose stones and fallen branches that lay across the winding path, even without Taran's hands on the reins. His eyes heavy with fatigue, Taran leaned forward and patted the stallion's powerful neck. "Follow the way, my friend," Taran murmured. "Surely you know it better than I do." At daybreak, Prydain raised his hand and signalled a halt. Throughout the night they had ridden, as it seemed to Taran, down a long series of descending slopes. They were still in the forest of Idris, but here the ground had levelled a little. Many of the trees were yet covered with leaves. The undergrowth was thicker, the land less stark than the hills around Dark Gate. Dolly, his pony snorting white mist, galloped up to report no sign of the huntsmen on their trail. "How long that sallow mealworm's powder lasts, I couldn't guess," said the dwarf, "and I don't think it'll do us that much good anyway. If a road's looking for the cauldron, he's going to look hard and close. The huntsmen must know we've come in this general direction. If enough of them keep after us, sooner or later they're bound to find us. That Gwistle, for all the help he's been, and his crow too. I wish we hadn't run into either of them. Eladir had dismounted and was anxiously studying Islamac's left foreleg. Taryn too swung down and went to Eladir's side. The horse whinnied and rolled her eyes as he approached. "She has gone lame," Taryn said. "Unless we can help her, I fear she will not be able to hold the pace."
"I need no pig boy to tell me that," answered Eladir.
He bent and examined the mare's hoof with a gentleness of touch which surprised Taryn. "If you lightened her burden," Taryn suggested, "it might ease her for a while. Fluda can take you up behind him." Eladir straightened, his eyes black and bitter.
"Do not give me counsel on my own steed. Islamac can go on, and so she will."
Nevertheless, as Eladir turned away, Taryn saw his face fill with lines of worry. "Let me look at her," Taryn said. "Perhaps I can find the trouble." He knelt and reached toward Islamac's foreleg.
"Do not touch her," cried Eladir. "She will not abide a stranger's hands."
Islamac reared and bared her teeth. Eladir laughed scornfully.
"Learn for yourself, pig boy," he said. "Her hooves are sharp as knives, you shall see."
Taryn rose and grasped Islamac's bridle. For a moment, as the horse lunged, he feared she would indeed trample him. Islamac's eyes were round with terror. She whickered and struck out at him. A hoof glanced against his shoulder, but Taryn did not loosen his hold. He reached up and put a hand to Islamac's long, bony head. The mare shuddered, but Taryn spoke quietly and soothingly to her. She tossed her mane, the straining muscles relaxed, the reins went loose, and she made no attempt to draw away. Without stopping the flow of reassuring words, Taryn raised her hoof. As he had suspected, there was a small, jagged stone wedged far back behind the shoe. He drew his knife. Islamac trembled, but Taryn worked quickly and deftly. The stone came free and fell to the ground. "This has happened even to Melanlas," Taryn explained, patting the roan's flank. "There's a place deep in the hoof. Anyone can miss it if they don't know. It was Cole who showed me how to find it."
Eladir's face was livid. "You have tried to steal honor from me, pig boy," he said through clenched teeth. "Will you now rob me of my horse?"
Taryn had expected no thanks, but the angry thrust of Eladir's words took him aback. Eladir's hand was on his sword. Taryn felt a surge of answering anger, a flush rising to his cheeks, but he turned away. "Your honor is your own," Taryn answered coldly, "and so is your steed. What stone is in your shoe, Prince of Penlarco?" He strode to his companions, who had taken cover in the tangle of brush. Gurgi had already opened the wallet and was proudly distributing its contents.
"Yes, yes," Gurgi cried gleefully. "Crunchings and munchings for all, thanks to generous, kind-hearted Gurgi. He will not let brave warriors suffer bellies filled only with howlings and growlings."
Eladir remained behind, patting Islamac's neck and murmuring in the roan's ear. Since he made no move to join the companions at their meal, Taryn called out to him, but the Prince of Penlarco only gave him a bitter glance and remained with Islamac.
"That foul-tempered nag is the only thing he cares about," muttered the bard. "And as far as I can see, the only thing that cares about him. They're two of a kind, if you ask me."
Adayan, sitting a little apart from the others, called Taryn to him. "I commend your patience," he said. "The black beast spurs Eladir cruelly." "I think he'll feel better once we find the cauldron," Taryn said. "There will be glory enough for all to share." Adayan smiled gravely. "Is there not glory enough in living the days given to us? You should know there is adventure in simply being among those we love, and the things we love, and beauty too." "But I would speak to you of another matter," Adayan went on. His handsome face, usually tranquil, was clouded. "I have few possessions, for I count them of little importance, but these few I treasure. Luego, my packets of healing herbs, and this," he said, touching the clasp at his throat. "The brooch I wear, a precious gift from Arianlyn, my betrothed. Should any ill befall me, they are yours. I have watched you closely, Taryn of Caer Dallben, In all my journeys, I have met no one else to whom I would rather entrust them."
"Do not speak of ill befalling you," Terran cried. "We are companions, and protect one another against dangers. Besides, Adain, your friendship is gift enough for me."
"Nevertheless," Adain replied, "we cannot know all the future holds. Will you accept them?" Terran nodded. "It is well," Adain said. "Now my heart is lighter."
After the meal, it was decided they would rest until midday. Eladir made no comment when Adain ordered him to stand the first watch. Terran rolled up in his cloak under the protection of a bush. Exhausted by the journey and by his own doubts and fears, he slept heavily. The sun was high when he opened his eyes. He sat up with a start, realizing his turn at guard had almost passed. Around him the companions still slept. "Eladir," he called, "why didn't you wake me?" He rose hurriedly to his feet. There was no sign of Eladir or Islamak. Terran hastily roused the others. He ran a little distance into the trees, then circled back. "He's gone!" Terran cried. "He's gone after the cauldron alone. He said he would, and now he's done it."
"Stolen a march on us, has he?" grumbled Dolly. "Well, we'll catch up to him, and if we don't, that's his concern. He doesn't know when he's going. For the matter of that, neither do we."
"Good riddance to him," said Fluda. "If we have any kind of luck at all, we might not see him again." For the first time, Terran saw deep alarm in Adain's face.
"We must overtake him quickly," Adain said. "Eladir's pride and ambition swallow him up. I fear to think what might happen should the cauldron come into his hands."
They set off with all possible haste. Adain soon found Eladir's trail leading southward. "I was hoping he might have got disgusted with the whole business and gone home," said Fluda, "but there's no doubt of it, he's headed for Morva." Despite their speed, the companions saw no sign of Eladir himself. They pressed on, urging the last strength from the labouring horses until they were obliged to halt for breath. A cold wind had risen, swirling the leaves in great circles above their heads.
"I do not know if we can overtake him," Adain said. "He rides as swiftly as we do, and he has nearly a quarter day's journey ahead of us."
His heart pounding, Terran flung himself from Menenlas and slumped to the ground. He cradled his head in his hands. From a distance came the shrill call of a bird, the first bird song he had heard since leaving Caer Dallben.
"That is not the true speech of a bird," Adain cried, springing to his feet. "The huntsmen have found us."
Without awaiting Adain's orders, the dwarf raced in the direction of the huntsman's signal. As Terran watched, Dolly vanished before his eyes. Adain drew his sword.
"This time we must stand against them," he said. "We can run from them no longer."
Quickly, he commanded Terran, Eilonwy, and Gurgi to ready their bows, while he and the bard mounted their horses. Within moments, the dwarf was back again.
"5 huntsmen!" he cried. "Go on, the rest of you. I'll play them the same trick." "No," said Adain. "I do not trust it to work again. Hurry, follow me."
He led them through a clearing and halted at the far side.
"Here we make our stand," Adain said to Terran. "As soon as they come in sight, Fluda, Dolly, and I will charge them from the flank. When they turn to give battle, loose your arrows."
Adain swung around to face the clearing. In another instant, the huntsmen burst from cover. They had no sooner taken a stride forward than Adain, with a great cry, urged his horse across the ground. Dolly and the bard galloped beside him. Even as Terran drew his bow, Adain was in the midst of the huntsmen, striking left and right with his sword. The dwarf had pulled the stubby axe from his belt and chopped furiously at his enemies. Surprised by the fierce attack, the huntsman spun about to engage the riders. Terran loosed his arrow and heard the shafts of Eilonwy and Gurgi whistle past him. The flight of all three went wild, snatched by the wind and skittering among the dry bushes. Shouting madly, Gurgi fitted another arrow to his bow. 3 huntsmen pressed towards Fluda and the dwarf, forcing them into a thicket. Adain's sword flashed and rang against the weapons of his assailants. Now Terran dared not loose another shaft for fear of hitting one of the companions. "We are fighting uselessly," he cried, and flung his bow to the ground. He unsheathed his sword and ran to Adain's aid. One of the huntsmen shifted his attack to Terran, who struck out at him with all his strength. His blow glanced from the jacket of animal skins, but the huntsman lost his footing and dropped to earth. Terran stepped forward. He had forgotten the vicious daggers of the huntsman until he saw the man raise himself and snatch at his belt. Taran froze with horror. In front of him, he saw the snarling face with its crimson brand, the arm uplifted to throw the blade. Suddenly, Luegor was between him and the huntsman. Adain rose in the saddle and swept down with his sword. As the huntsman toppled, the knife flew glittering through the air. Adain gasped and dropped his weapon. He slumped over Luegor's mane, clutching the dagger in his breast. With a cry of anguish, Taran caught him as he was about to fall. "Fflewddur! Dowley!" Taran shouted. "To us! Adain is wounded!"
Hey, you want to buy something? You can check the description for my books and audiobooks. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content.